Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to do a review on the first part of the video for our first lesson. So the things that you need to know, there are two main things that you need to know. First is something called, and I'm going to write it very large, it's something called combining like terms, okay? So it's been a while, combining like terms. So that's the number one thing that we're going to review. And for combining like terms, you have to know the terms, the like terms. Like for example, let's say an example. I'm gonna put it right here. If you have something like 7x minus 5x plus 3, okay? Well, you have to identify which terms are like term. Well, we call each one a term here, right? So this thingy right here, and this thingy right here, and this thingy right here, we call it a term, okay? And this is also a term, and this is also a term. But out of the three terms, two of which are very similar because they're the same letter, and we call these the like terms. So we're gonna say 7x and negative 5x are like terms. Okay? And to combine like terms, right, because since these two terms have an x, we're going to combine them. So you do 7 minus 5. So positive 7 minus 5. If you want to confirm it, you could use your Desmos calculators right here. You could just do 7 minus 5 like this, right? You don't put an x on it. And then you put enter, you'll get, actually, let me backspace. Well, if you put backspace, right? So 7 minus 5 is 2 right here. So I put 2. Now, just in case, I want to see if you accidentally put 7x minus 5x. I want to see, would that actually do something? I don't think it does anything, so you can't do that. So just do 7 minus 5 without the variable. So you're going to say it's going to be 2x, and then you bring down the plus 3. Now these two terms you cannot combine because one of them has an x, the other one doesn't have an x, so they're not like terms. So if that's the case, this is your final answer, right? That's how you simplify. Let's do another example very quickly. Well, if you have, let's say, negative 5k plus 7 minus 5 plus 10k, like this, okay? Well, out of the 4 terms, there's 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, and 4 terms. Well, out of the 4 terms, these two are like terms. So we're going to just underline it, right? Or maybe squiggly underline it so that I could identify which ones are like terms. So negative 5 plus 10, you have to use a calculator, or if you could do it mentally, but I prefer you use a calculator to find out what is negative 5 plus 10. So I'm going to put it right here, right? So on my calculator, you're going to type negative 5 plus 10 like this. And then you see that the answer is positive 5. So you're going to put 5, but don't forget the variable. So these two combined, that becomes 5k. Then you try to do what's positive 7 minus 5. Remember, the 7 is positive, 5 is negative. So 7 minus 5, didn't we do that already? It becomes 2. So you write 2 after it, but is it a positive 2 or is it a negative 2? So 7 minus 5 is positive 2, so you put a plus sign in the front, and then that's it. When you write the final answer, you usually write the term that has a coefficient first, and then you write the constant, right? We call this a constant at the end. So we're just gonna make a note, right? We call this a constant. The 2 itself, it's a constant. Constant is just any number by itself. So in this case, the 2 is the constant. In the previous example, the 3 is a constant, right? So these are the terms that you have to know, the words that you have to know. Well, the second thing that you have to review is something called distributive property. Distributive property. Okay, what is it? You have seen it before, I'm pretty sure. Something like if you have 3 multiplied by a quantity, like let's say x plus 3, right? So back in the days, you're going to multiply the 3 with the first term in the parentheses, and you multiply the outside number with the second number in the parentheses. So every time you see an arrow in this class, it means multiply. So 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times 3 is 9. And then since you have a positive times a positive, your answer is positive, right? So this 9 right here is positive, and then that's it. Now let's do a harder example that we're gonna work with, negative numbers and multiplying negative numbers. So let's say you have something like -5 multiplied by 6 minus k, like this, okay? So you have -5. Let me draw the arrow first. You have -5 times 6 is multiplied. And then you have -5 times -k, right? Let's find out what's -5 times 6 using the calculator to just make sure that our answer is correct. So on my calculator, I'm going to erase all these. You're going to put -5. Let me type it again. -5 multiplied by 6, and you get -30. So on decimals, it says that, well, the product of -5 and 6 is -30. Then you're trying to multiply next is -5 times -k. Well, again, you can't really type in a letter in decimals, so in front of k there's an invisible -1. So you do -5 times -1. So what is -5 times -1? I'm going to use a calculator. -5 multiplied by -1 like this, and you'll get +5 right there. So that means you're going to put +5. So +5, but don't forget the letter because there is a letter in the first place, the variable in the first place. So you have -30 plus 5k. Now remember, this is not really your final answer because you're going to write this term with the variable first, and then you write the constant at the end. So in this class and in most of the math classes, in the future, you're going to just swap their places. You're going to write plus 5k first. Now, since you can write the plus, you don't have to write plus, doesn't matter for the first term. And then on the second term, right, the -30 becomes on the second position, so it becomes 5k minus 30. So these are the things, the two topics that you have to remember before we get into the first lesson. These are the review, and if you need more time to kind of review, if you want me to give you more examples, feel free to email me, contact me. I'll give you more problems to work on, to practice. But after that, if you think you're ready, we're going to move on to the very first lesson, which is 1-1 linear equations. So I'm just going to put it right here. Okay. So, and we're going to refer these two concepts in our lessons. So let's do that. So 1-1 linear equations. So linear equations look something like this, right? So linear equations, definitely because of the word equation as an equal sign. Something like 2y plus 1 is equal to 15. That's an equation. Now, this is not an equation from the previous review. This is just expressions. This is an equation. Equation has an equal sign. Okay, so there's an equal sign right there. Well, how do you solve this equation? We're just going to rewrite it in the middle. Okay, and I think a lot of people in the past, I think they were told to kind of draw a line in the middle. You don't have to if you don't want to. And your goal is to isolate the y as much as possible. Previously, you learned that you're going to undo the adding and subtracting first before you undo the multiplying and dividing. So it's like reverse PEMDAS. So what you do is you're going to, since it's positive 1, you're going to subtract 1 on both sides. And we're using something called subtraction property of equality. That's the name of the step. Right? Subtraction property of equality, because we're subtracting both sides of the equation. So plus 1 and minus 1, they cancel because that becomes a 0. So 2y is equal to. And if you want to double check what's 15 minus 1, again, on the decimals calculator, you're going to do 15 minus 1 like this, and it becomes 14. So the answer says is 14. So 2y equals 14 thing. So to do that, since it's multiplication, the opposite of multiplication is division. You divide both sides by 2. And that step is called the division property of equality. Division property of equality. So you divide both sides by 2. So 2 divided by 2, it becomes 1. So 1y is equal to, well, half of 14. 14 divided by 2 means half of 14. So it's going to be 7. So if one thing is equal to 7, that means that thing is going to be 7. So y is equal to 7. Something like this will be the simplest thing that you're going to see in this lesson. Okay, that's an equation. Well, that was example 1. Well, example 2 would be something that requires to use some of these things. Let's say, for example, if you have 5y plus 1 minus 7y is equal to 17. Something like this. Okay, you see that it becomes a little bit longer. Well, before you do something on both sides, right, you're going to pick the longer side and you want to check whether you could simplify, you could combine like terms, right? You could only combine like terms on one side of the equation. So you're going to cover up the 17 with my calculator, right? And you want to see whether there are like terms you could combine. And the answer is yes, because out of the 3 terms, 2 of which are like terms. There's 5y and minus 7y. So to do 5 minus 7. So if you're not fluent with negative numbers, we're going to use a calculator and put what's 5 minus 7. And the answer is negative 2. So we're going to put negative 2 here. So negative 2, don't forget the variable y. And then you bring down the plus 1 is equal to 17. Like this. Hey, doesn't it look like the things that we just did? So you're going to subtract 1 on both sides, like this. Again, we're using subtraction property of equality. And then the ones cancel. So it becomes negative 2y is equal to 16. Okay, so 17 minus 1 is 16. And then after that, you divide both sides by negative 2. Okay, because it's multiplication in the first place, so the opposite of multiplication is division. So you're going to cross it out, because negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1. Negative divided by negative is positive. If you're not sure, again, you could always use a calculator on decimals. So you put negative 2 divided by negative 2. And it should get you positive 1 right here. Right? So that's why I put 1 there. Then you put and then you divide with 16 divided by negative 2. So on the decimals, you put 16 divided by negative 2, and you get negative 8. So that means 1y is equal to negative 8. Well, you don't really have to write the 1, so write y is equal to negative 8. And then that's the answer to the equation, right? Well, one last example that I want to teach you would be, let me use a different piece of paper. Well, in example 3, let's work with equation that requires you to do distributive property. So something like if you have 3 open parentheses, x minus 2 is equal to 7. Okay, so first, again, you're going to check whether you could combine like terms or use distributive property on one side of the equation. So I'm going to draw a line because I get used to drawing lines. Again, you don't have to if you don't want to. So I see parentheses, I'm going to distribute like this. So you do 3 times x, which is just 3x on the first arrow. Then you find out what's 3 times negative 2. Well, 3 times negative 2, if we're not sure, we're going to use a calculator to find out what's 3 times negative 2. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So we're going to put negative 6 behind the 3x is equal to 7, like this. Okay. And then from here, the steps are pretty much the same, right? So since this is minus, the opposite of minus is a plus. So we're going to plus 6 on both sides, okay? Now you notice that this time I plus 6, so this is not subtraction. This is addition, property of equality. So this is adding on both sides. That's why we call it addition. So negative 6 and 6, you cancel them because when you add them, it becomes 0, okay? So you're left with 3x is equal to 7 plus 6, right? I just want to double check. I want to find out what's 7 plus 6. We're going to use a calculator to find out what's 7 plus. I meant to put a plus. 7 plus 6, I get 13. So 7 plus 6 is 13. So 3x equals 13. Okay. Well, at the end, it begins to be repetitive, right? Since it's multiplication, you divide both sides by 3, like this. So you cross out the 3 because 3 divided by 3 is 1x is equal to, well, 13 divided by 3. I'm not quite sure what is it because I don't think 3 goes into 13 evenly. So let's confirm with our decimals. We're going to put 13 divided by 3. Well, you notice that decimals will give you the app will give you a decimal, a very long decimal. I do not want you to write in decimals. I want you to write in improper fractions. In high school, we always use, or most of the time, use improper fractions. So remember how you change the fraction? You press this button right here. So you press it, and it'll get you 13 over 3, which is the same as what we start with, actually. Because 13 divided by 3 does not give you a nice whole number. So when you write as a fraction, it just becomes itself, which is 13 over 3. That means you don't have to do any math. All you have to do is just write this division as a fraction, 13 over 3. That means x is equal to 13 over 3, and that's it. That's pretty much it. Well, that's the end of day 1. And the following parts, I'll teach you how do you log into your homework on Pearson. Hey everyone, so to get to your homework, first you go to my CNUSD website and then you click on the top of the page, my CNUSD, to log in. Well, you're going to type in your username and your password. Well, in this case, your student ID and your password. Then you go on to resource. I think for you guys it's resource. And then you go to a place called Pearson Savas Easy. Pearson Savas Easy. I'm not quite sure how you say that word, but it's Pearson Easy. Click on that. And you get to this pop-up page. And you're going to click on your class textbook. So you click on this right here. This is called Envision Integrated Mathematics 1 2009 Common Core. You click on that, a new window pop up again, and you see 3 different colors. The green color is your online textbooks. I teach from this textbooks. So if you don't have a copy, an actual copy, you could always go to here and click on the appropriate sections that we're teaching. But to find your online homework, you look at the reddish, orangish box in between, in the middle. It's called classes. So you're gonna click on here, click on classes, and depending on which period you're in, there will be new assignments here. So you're going to click on the click into the assignments, and then do your homework, and then that's it. Well, inside the homework, there are problems for you to work on, which allow you 3 attempts before they give you the final answer. So for example, for this problem, if you accidentally got a wrong answer, it'll tell you keep trying. Then you type in another answer, and if it's wrong, then it'll give you one more chance. And the third time that you got it wrong, it'll tell you the answer right away. So, but you could always get help by viewing an example on this part of the feature. So it'll tell you what to do step by step, step by step, step by step until the final answer. So you could always refer to the question, help view an example, or you could use help me to solve this to actually work it step by step. So there will be more answer boxes for you to fill in, but at least it will help you on your learning. Now for this problem, what do you do when you get it wrong, right? So well, to get a point or to get scores on that homework, then you click on similar questions and you keep practicing until you get it right. So if I were to click on similar questions, you notice that the questions changed. It's different from the previous one. So let's say this time you got it right. Let's say x is equal to 5, right? Well, if you got it right, it will tell you well done, okay, and then you move on to the next problem. So you click on next to move on to the next problem, like this. And once you finish all the problem, I believe the next thing is for you to make sure that you answer all the questions. If there's anything that it's not answered, make sure that you go back and look at it like this, right? So this is not answered. But let's say assume that if you finish your all of the questions on your homework, Then you go to the bottom, I believe. Oh, actually, this button right here says submit my work. So you click on it, and then boom, I only got 3% just because I only answered one question correct. The rest I did not answer. So in order for you to get at least 80% or any good scores, make sure that you answer every single question and it's correct, not incorrect, for you to get as many points as possible on your homework. If you have any questions, please contact me.